Hi, Marlena, Martin. This is Frank Cordero. Um, I'm stepping in for Ken Norman while Ken and his wife are going to have their baby. And Ken asked me, as a favor to him while he was away, to supply some critiques for your character models that you guys have been doing. I teach model creation here at the school, though that is largely a hard surface class, when I went back to school and when I was developing my own material, I went on the character creation route and very familiar with the program, the expectations, and also hopefully maybe some of that experience will be useful to you. Um, one of the questions that I had, since I'm not entirely familiar with all your progress, it sounds like Ken and you have a working history together, and I watched your video that you had posted earlier. There was this one over here, and it was good at least to get a little sense of who you are, and maybe get to know you a little better, and then see how far you've come from the work where you had started earlier with this character, which by the way showed a lot of improvement, okay, from these earlier days to where you've landed right now. All right, and I think that definitely um, there's two parts of this conversation that are going to be important to you. I don't know how far Ken has gotten into it, but there's two parts. There's the art making process of how good the imagery looks as a sculpt, um, and then there is topology. And I know Ken has probably talked a little bit about this with you in the past. I'm going to talk about those two things separately so that at least you have an idea of where I'm coming from. From an art making perspective, it's obvious that you've made some improvements on some of your models. With that said, I think that there's still opportunities to develop and improve your models moving forward. I think there's the way you sculpt in ZBrush. That kind of is still developing in terms of your technique. Some of your forms seem a little mushy in places like the eyes, where maybe it could be a little bit more sharpened in terms of how the lids are modeled. Some of that might be just exploring other brushes that help you get to sharper corners, like the polish brush, or some of the other brushes that kind of help delineate planar surfaces a little bit more clearly. It's a struggle that a lot of new artists with ZBrush have. I had it myself, and still evolving on that front. The other thing is the interpretation of hair. It's obviously you've used the looks like what to be the rake tool for kind of suggesting hair. Um, and there's lots of ways to kind of represent hair as a sculpture in ZBrush. I know, though, that there's going to be a certain point where you're going to have to make a transition on how you want to represent that hair from a production aspect. If you were to transition this model from a clay sculpt or virtual clay sculpt into a usable asset in a production. And that's the part where I think I'm kind of missing some information on how this is all coming together. Right now, according to deliverables, um, from a PCC aspect, it looks like you've only gotten as far as the sculpt. That is because I'm looking at the wireframe mesh, and it looks like basically the wireframe um, that came from the sculpt, but it not really what I call um, a true production sculpt wireframe in terms of how it would work, how the topology follows the form of the face and the features in such a way that when um, the mouth would change shape when it was rigged, it would deform properly. I wanted to show you a Pinterest page just to give you an example of maybe some things that I've been looking at that might be useful, helpful in the future. And you could probably type this in yourself, and I just typed in CG wireframe reference, and I typed on an image in Pinterest, and this came up, and it was nice to see that a CG artist is working to kind of show you lots of different examples of successful topology, both at the character full figure level as well as the head. And since you're doing a bust, I think these would be good to look at. Um, this one probably to me out of all of them is the most successful because the topology is fairly even. It's dense enough to be able to capture expression and movement in the face. Um, especially the loops that go around the eyes, especially the loops that kind of work around the mouth area. This is doing pretty well in terms of handling topology. There's a nice and even flow of the topology, spacing of the edges. So this is showing some promise. Even with cartoon stuff, there's a method to this way of representing CG faces so that you can give them a better chance of the form. This is another one that is a female figure. Again, a little dense, but I would say for a human figure, this is, very good. Again, and I want you to start kind of looking at topology like this in the future, because I think right now what you're doing is you're just working on trying to get the art part of your sculpt up to par. And I'd like to see some improvement on more accuracy when you're looking at shapes, especially when you want to kind of compare it to, let's say, your reference image that you started with. One of the hallmarks of a good modeler is to really start being able to interpret drawings and pictures like this and turn them into believable CG assets. And things like that I want you to start paying attention to a little bit more is a little bit more of the bone structure, about how her face is a little bit more tapered at the bottom, but it's not so tapered that it almost kind of feels like you've made her Asian in her characteristics, with the round cheeks and the flattened face. So you have an opportunity to probably lengthen her head a little bit from maybe over here down to maybe about here, just to kind of make up for what amounts to a largely more oval shaped head, where you've kind of created more of a rounder shaped head. On top of that, the hair is, the hairline starts about halfway, and it's actually a pretty big feature, and it comes above and breaks the silhouette quite a bit. So that's something that I think could be improved to kind of really capture the flavor of the illustration. It is a challenge to interpret a drawing where you only have one vantage point, and it's important to kind of get supplemental reference of characters or people that have similar likenesses to this particular character if you're trying to go for, basically recreating that. I saw that you did had some samples of pictures here that I guess were some inspirational reference. I'm not sure if you were looking at any one of these as sort of your solid, here's your reference, and this is the one I'm sticking with. It looks like you were just looking at a bunch of different things. Hard to know for sure, though, if you were looking at this image compared to maybe other things, and then just came up with this. One thing for sure, though, just some advice about how you start looking at your efforts. You're going to be working probably on maybe other people's work and other people's ideas and dreams. And it's going to become important to you to start really paying attention to the formation of 3D shapes, forms, and volumes so that your stuff becomes closer and closer to the targets that they set for you. And it is something that art directors and lead modelers will rely on for you to kind of show that you can hit those targets. And right now I think you're making some strides on improving your sculpting technique. Whether I can say this matches this, there's still quite a bit of distance between the target that's over here and then what you've sculpted on this side. So moving forward, I think what I'd like to see happen is obviously you need to still sculpt. You need to sculpt all the time. You need to sculpt characters all the time, and you need to do a lot of them. Don't underestimate volume. In other words, you could spend all month on one. I'd rather see you do 5 quicker ones just to get through and get more observation under your belt, so you get more practice at looking things, and just start getting your observation muscles more honed so that you can get closer to your targets. Secondly, once you do get to the point where you have a sculpt that you feel like is really strong, then you can start building on the next levels, making a an actual model that is topology and animation friendly, and that's the stuff that I was showing on this stuff. And there's a whole conversation related to topology on this front, and it's also part of being a character modeler. Here again is a little bit simpler layout in terms of what's happening here. Again, it's a simpler, younger female, so there's not going to be nearly as many facial edges, but this is also good sometimes to see the clarity and the organization of the edge flow and topology. I would say this though, probably the trend for modeling today with the higher resolution model is starting to go more toward this, just because we can handle it now. My suggestion is just pay attention, look at topology, look at models, look at people who are doing better work than you are right now, since you're still in the learning stage, and start paying attention to some of the choices in how they're using edge flow to properly describe form that's going to be deformed in the animation pipeline. And that's really all I have right now for you. Again, I'm sorry it was a little bit long-winded. And I'm sorry that this is our first conversation when it comes to topology. If you ever need to get a hold of me, my name is Frank Cordero. You can reach me at fcordero@fullsail.com. And then, of course, Ken will be back in about a couple of weeks once he's done with helping his wife with the baby. Again, thank you again. For letting me be a part of I guess contributing to your character development and growth. And good luck on your future endeavors. Okay.